Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren, and welcome to my multimodal case study presentation centered on the topic of building student confidence. To begin, I'll brief over my personal connection to my research topic, and I'll introduce my inspiration for this case study. My teachers have formed the core of who I am today, and as a student for the past 16 years, I believe that my teachers taught me to be the truest form of myself, building my confidence, finding my knowledge, and sparking my passion for education. This spark led me to pursuing an education minor at UC Berkeley, where I could envision and pursue my own journey in teaching and hopefully help students discover and build their own confidence, just like how my teachers helped me. While volunteering as an after-school tutor for the East Bay Collaborative for Underserved Children, I had the amazing opportunity to work with a set of three siblings, whose real names I will omit for my case presentation. Rather than focusing on a particular field site for my case study, I was more drawn to the sibling dynamics and interplay between culture, family, and education. In particular, I spent the majority of my 3 months volunteering there working with Sarah, the eldest of these three siblings. Outside of academics, Sarah is a goalie for her nationally ranked soccer team, and she's a supportive older sister that loves helping her younger siblings stay organized. However, in her seventh grade classroom, she sees struggles with being rejected from schools, being outcast and bullied by her peers, and constantly being compared to her high performing siblings, particularly her older sister, who has been likened to a superstar in the classroom. Moreover, the entire family struggles financially, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, their former school, St. Cornelius, shut down, creating a huge obstacle for the family to overcome. The combination of these distressing events has had a detrimental impact on Sarah's confidence. Her lack of self-esteem prohibits her from participating, asking questions, and raising her hand in class. Her poor academic performance and inability to grasp academic English almost led to her repeating a grade level, which has further reinforced her academic insecurities. And when I first started giving virtual tutoring sessions for Sarah, she had the tendency to hide behind the screen. For example, she would tilt her camera up to only expose her upper forehead and would only talk when responding to a question, almost as to make herself invisible. I sympathize with Sarah's background, and her story motivated me to center my case study around her. I wanted to explore the relationship between school and confidence, and I used family and culture to help frame my analysis. And from this experience, I devised a research question based on Sarah's challenges with confidence. My question is, how can different teaching methods build student confidence? In relation to Sarah, I define and measure confidence as engagement, self-praise, and comfortability in the classroom. I noted these through both verbal and nonverbal behaviors, such as asking clarifying questions, looking into the camera, or learning in the zone and being immersed in the content. In particular, I explored three different teaching strategies in this study, and these include multimodal learning, reciprocal teaching, and active pedagogies. I also posed two additional questions, which will not be addressed in this case study, but are still necessary to include when framing the context for my main question. These are, how does the role of siblings impact academic performance? And how can popular culture as a teaching tool improve engagement in the classroom? The family lens contextualizes my case study because I have the unique opportunity of seeing how the three personalities of the children I work with interact and shape one another. And the cultural lens will be used later to explore the findings of this case study. To answer my own research question, I draw upon four education theories. First, I draw upon Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Vygotsky emphasized the development and learning processes of children, and he viewed learning as an interaction between someone and their environment. To learn, however, we need to be presented with tasks that challenge our current abilities. And these tasks exist within the zone of proximal development, and we require the assistance of others to fully understand these concepts and shift them out of our zone of proximal development and into the learn category. I further explore the ZOPD in my case study, in my case study. Secondly, I draw upon Palinskar's method of reciprocal teaching, a tactic used to help students construct meanings in text. I practiced reciprocal teaching in a reading comprehension exercise with Sarah, where I integrated the four reciprocal teaching strategies, including summary, questioning, clarifying, and predicting. Palanzar notes how reciprocal teaching often lends itself to scaffolding, which occurs when teachers lend support to students and gradually minimize their role as the student internalizes the learning approaches and becomes independent. Third, I referenced Jewett's perspective on multimodality and literacy in student classrooms. Jewett explains that the subtle displays between peers, teachers, and the surrounding environment, and how they communicate meaning and may influence the students' perceptions of classroom material. Specifically, I attempt to use still image, gesture, and speech to present school material, and using multimodal tools to help students interpret and retain information they receive from their schools can provide valuable insight for both students and teachers. And lastly, I allude to asset pedagogies and funds of knowledge, a concept illustrated in the writing of Moll, Amonte, Neff, and Gonzalez. Asset-based pedagogy approach values diversity in thought, culture, and experiences, and seeks to unlock student potential by integrating students' funds of knowledge. These funds of knowledge are cultural and cognitive resources with great potential utility for classroom instruction. And I attempt to incorporate Sarah's funds of knowledge by weaving her knowledge of popular culture within the academic language. Over the course of 3 months, from February 8th to February 8th, 2022 to May 5th, 2022, I volunteered in an after-school tutoring program hosted by the 21st Century East Bay Collaborative for Underserved Children, or the ECUC. The ECUC virtual tutoring program helps students meet state standards, particularly students who attend high poverty and low performing schools. The program traditionally only provides academic enrichment opportunities for two schools, St. Anthony Catholic School and St. Elizabeth Elementary School. However, for the scope of my case study, I'll be focusing on the set of siblings attending St. Joseph School. The St. Joseph School is a private nonprofit Catholic school that serves students from TK to 8th grade. It is located in Fremont, California, and has a student population of around 300 students. For health and safety reasons, all sessions were conducted in a virtual format over Zoom, and each session lasted around 2 hours, and the majority of my student interactions were one-on-one. I primarily served students that performed significantly above or below their grade level, and in all but one session, I worked with the family attending St. Joseph. Within the Zoom breakout rooms, I was monitored by Mrs. H, the academic coordinator for ECUC. As aforementioned, my case study focuses on Sarah, a 7th grade student who I taught math, reading comprehension, and spelling at the state standard level. Directly after each tutoring session, I documented my observations and drew connections to relevant research theories. I created 8 ethnographic field notes, and I used an inductive coding method called descriptive coding from Joseph Saldana. I used codes such as sense of self-worth or lack thereof, encouragement, learning in the zone, use of outside funds of knowledge in the classroom, comfortability, independence or lack thereof, and scaffolding. These codes helped me to analyze Sarah's behavior and actions and provided the basis for analyzing my 3 teaching strategies: multimodal learning, reciprocal teaching, and asset pedagogies. They also helped me code quantitative information so I could clearly see the impact of the 3 strategies on student confidence, engagement, and comfortability levels. Now I'll delve into my main findings from attempting 3 scaffolding strategies. The first approach I attempted was multimodal learning. The following excerpt comes from my 8th field note. Prior to trying out this method, I first had Sarah try out solving for the surface area of a triangular prism independently. And after around 30 seconds of pondering, Sarah looked really defeated. And so she began listing numbers out without any explanation and was overall very unsure of herself. And I decided to intervene and try out a multimodal approach to scaffolding. And so for this method, I used digital and multimodal tools to demonstrate how to calculate surface area for different shapes. For example, while screen sharing my iPad, I would draw out both a flattened and a 3D version of the diagram to demonstrate how to derive the formula intuitively. I use GoodNotes and my iPad to demonstrate math concepts and create these cheat sheets as shown on the slide for Sarah to utilize in the future and reference when needed. This combination of still image, gesture, and speech to present school material kept Sarah engaged throughout the lesson. Furthermore, by acting as the vicarious form of consciousness, Sarah metaphorically watched at the passenger seat as I completed a practice problem first. She asked clarifying questions throughout, and when she was puzzled, she just got back into it. And once we completed this crash course, she was able to attempt taking the wheel for herself after asking all the clarifying questions needed. This time, sorry, Sarah was able to overcome moments of self doubt and confusion, and she converted my cheat sheets into tools for conscious control and internalized the concepts. In a brief feedback interview, Sarah said that she discovered that she's a visual learner through this lesson. She managed to absorb the lesson better when it was presented in an audio-visual format, just as Druitt was supporting in his writing. And I believe that this method was conducive to scaffolding and expanding the zone of proximal development, since she initially lacked the skill and confidence beforehand to solve the problem independently. After reattempting the same problem, she was able to confidently explain her solution and double check by using her cheat sheet. Next, the second tactic I attempted to integrate into the teaching session were directly drawn from Palinsar's collaborative approaches to comprehension instruction. The four reciprocal teaching strategies, or RT, I used included question get generating, summarizing, clarifying, and predicting. The following excerpt is from my second field note. Prior to trying out RT, I simply had Sarah read out a paragraph from a chapter in the novel I Am Malala. She stumbled slightly on the pronunciation of words she didn't know, but she never bothered to probe further into the word's meaning by asking for the definition. And I realized that her focus might have just been on reading the words rather than understanding the meaning. I began introducing the RT method by asking her to summarize, in her own words, what she just read out loud. But rather than summarizing, Sarah scoured the text, looked for the right answer, and responded by quoting directly from the book. I realized that this approach was not working because she simply was inputting and outputting information from the novel without interpreting the meaning on a deeper level. I believe this behavior could be attributed to a lack of confidence. As Palinsar mentions, students who have a history of academic difficulty and who are anxious and feel helpless in school are inclined to attribute success with a task to luck and attribute failure with a task to their own lack of ability. I preceded the lesson, and when I asked her to make predictions about what would happen next, she pondered for a second, and without referencing the book, she gave a very sound prediction. And as we read on, her prediction came true. Her face lit up, satisfied that her answer was correct. And I decided to repeat this reciprocal teaching method again, but this time I encouraged her to summarize the paragraph without quoting from the book. She briefly scanned over the text again and with intent and thought for several moments to formulate her response. And to my surprise, she responded while looking directly into the camera, something that I've never really seen from a student with her shy personality. And other positive behaviors that happened because of RT included pausing to ask questions when she was unfamiliar with the vocabulary. And as time progressed, she connected with the text more, and she used my RT questions as a way to clarify her understanding and to delve into the novel by making connections and predictions. Lastly, another observation I made is how Sarah began to anticipate the questions and prepare her own responses before I even asked them. She began internalizing the RT strategies subconsciously, using them to check up on her own comprehension. For these reasons, I believe that RT lended itself well to scaffolding. Additionally, I believe RT enhances motivation by increasing student awareness of the kinds of factors that influence student learning outcomes. Rather than feeling lost or held back by her own perceived lack of ability, Sarah was able to make connections with the text because she relied on the RT strategies. They instilled within her the confidence to achieve successful outcomes attributed to her own actions and capabilities, not purely by luck. Lastly, I attempted to connect classroom concepts with asset pedagogies, or strategies that identify and leverage funds of knowledge. The following excerpt is taken from my fourth field note, and it details the experience I had working on a couple of matching synonyms worksheets. The first word was impressive, which she was the word impressive, and which she correctly matched with the word spectacular. However, when I asked her to use the word, either word in a sentence, she pondered for around 10 seconds, saying ums and ahs until she finally said, I don't know. I asked her if she wanted me to provide an example sentence first, and she nodded. I provided her an example sentence, but I questioned how I could make this lesson more personable and relatable to Sarah. Another word was installment, which she correctly matched with the word cereal. This time again, Sarah struggled to generate a sentence looking to me for help. I recalled how Sarah liked watching crime and detective shows such as Criminal Minds, and so I encouraged her to try to incorporate this interest. I could see her eyes light up as she was ecstatic and when she understood what I was referencing. She used a sentence with the phrase serial killer and connected the meaning to an out of class concept. And lastly, the next word was illness, which she correctly paired with the word disease. However, this time she hesitated less when coming up with a response, and without any help or hesitation, she was able to reference her favorite television show, Grey's Anatomy. Applying her personal interests, she said, in Grey's Anatomy, Meredith Grey works in the hospital where she cures patients' illnesses. She seemed very sure of herself and had less verbal pauses when she gave this response. Following Paris and Alim's writing, I wanted Sarah to incorporate her own acquired discourses and existing funds of knowledge and apply them to mainstream education. In this instance, she used her discourse on popular media to create sentences pertaining to her existing knowledge. Hopefully, this imparted a lesson to her that it is completely acceptable to leverage your existing knowledge to elevate your understanding in the classroom. I realized how connecting mainstream education with popular culture allows students to draw connections and make meaning. As Mole mentions, adaptive pedagogies can enhance motivation by allowing students to embrace youth culture and the evolving nature of youth identity. And as further detailed in Paris and Alim's writing, youth identity is defined outside of the dominant lens or in the white gaze. More importantly, active pedagogies allow students to extend their existing funds of knowledge, and these funds of knowledge provide an essential bridge that can actually help expand the student's zone of proximal development, or what the student is capable of learning with assistance. Overall, the combination of these three methods actually led to an improvement in Sarah's grade and sparked her curiosity for learning again. This leads us to a key implication for my observations and case study. Using any of these three scaffolding techniques, including multimodal learning, reciprocal learning, and asset pedagogies, can not only improve educational outcomes, but can also boost student perceptions of confidence. To recap on each of the method's outcomes, first, multimodal learning allows students to better internalize and visualize concepts, which in turn will ease feelings of confusion and anxiety. Secondly, reciprocal teaching empowers students to think critically and comprehend meanings, which can help students attribute successful outcomes to their own capabilities. And lastly, asset pedagogies validate students' existing funds of knowledge, which allows them to make connections with dominant literacies while still leveraging each student's own individual talents, culture, and experiences. In conjunction, this relates back to my research question, how can different teaching methods build student confidence? The answer I've come to in my research is the most effective ways of building student confidence include scaffolding and personalized learning to fit the needs and relevant experiences of each individual in ways that validate their unique experiences and talents. Admittedly, there were three key limitations of my case study. I only observed a single site, St. Joseph's School in Fremont, California, and I worked with a set of three siblings as opposed to a variety of students. So my findings were limited to the experiences of just a handful of people. Second, my observations were limited to Zoom, which meant that I had limited communications with the students if they muted their microphones or silenced their volumes, and I could only observe what the camera physically showed. I also only documented observations from February 8th to May 5th. So within these 3 months, it might not be enough time to draw comprehensive long-term conclusions. To talk about the implications of my research, I realized how this era of one-size-fits-all education increasingly disadvantages students like Sarah. I believe my findings underscore the need to drastically improve access to individualized learning for students that come from backgrounds not represented in academia. For too long, the education system has evaluated students on criteria established under the white gaze. However, this study calls for the use of more asset pedagogies and culture sustaining pedagogies to extend students' existing funds of knowledge. Knowing that education was pivotal to my own development, I strive to bridge the learning gap and improve the access for every student. The following slides are parts of my appendix, including my coded fieldwork and references. Thank you so much for listening to my multimodal case presentation, and I really enjoyed taking Education W140 this semester, and I'm grateful to have the experience of collaborating with Sarah and her siblings, and also Mrs. H at the ECUC virtual tutoring site. Thank you so much.